Oh, how time flies when you're having fun. Oh boy, college football is just a beautiful game. There's no doubt about that. You know, we've gotten, here to week 4. We're looking to week 4, but we don't know much about our teams, do we? We don't know. But you know what I've been saying. You just wait till we get to the meat and the potatoes of this season. And let me tell you what, folks, we have reached it. We have made it to the meat and potatoes of the football season. Oh boy, we've got some great games this week to look forward to. There's been a lot of talk just about these matchups, and we got so much to talk about right here on RideAlong Sports. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Brandon Taylor, and we're going to be looking at some different things today, particularly the SEC slate, your SEC slate for this weekend for Saturday, September 23rd, 2023. And we'll look at some games outside the SEC. There's some notable matchups there, but we'll focus on the SEC. We'll get to some, maybe some other things here. We'll look at the road to victory for some of these games. But again, I just thank you so much for joining us, for listening, for watching. And why don't you follow us on TikTok for more exclusive content to see what else we're doing. That's at RideAlong Sports. You can find us right there. Myself and Zack Ainsworth contribute to that. And be sure to follow us there. And let's not waste any time. The slate this week, we're really getting to the point of the season here, like I said a moment ago, in week 4, where there's a lot of SEC versus SEC matchups, and we absolutely love that. I do. Meat and potatoes, like I say. And there's some statement games. We talked about statement games last week with LSU and Mississippi State, and we saw what LSU did. They answered the call. I said, hey, if y'all want to, show the world what you are, that Florida State game a couple weeks prior was just an outlier, was just jitters, was, just a early season slump. Show us something in this game, and boy, did they. And there's some other statement games here, and there's real chances for things to really get shaken up. But let's not waste any more time rambling on about that. Let's take a look at your Week 4 preview right here on RideAlong Sports. Let's start here. Obviously, in the SEC at the very top, starting at noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central Time, you have Auburn at Texas A&M. Now, let me tell you something about this game here. You have two coaches, one just getting back into the SEC in Hugh Freeze at Auburn. And you've got another coach, Jimbo Fisher, that's been in the SEC there at Texas A&M for a little bit. And there's no doubt about it that his seat is getting hotter and hotter every week. And it's not getting any cooler. And, I don't know, because I don't really pay much attention to Texas A&M fans. If any of you out there are Texas A&M fans, let me know what you think about this. Let me know what you think about the program in general at this point, and Jimbo Fisher in particular. He is he's got this hefty salary, and the oil money there in Texas, as people like to refer to it as, it's near unlimited. So there's no buyout too great. If they really want to get rid of him, if they want to kick him out the door, I think they can do so. I'm not picking on him. I want them to be better. I want Texas A&M to turn it around. It's a shame that it wasn't all that long ago they had the greatest recruiting class of all time and didn't make it to a bowl game the same year. And literally the only thing you can look at, the only person you can look at is the coach. And that's that. Jimbo is on the edge right now. And you can tell when he's in a press conference, he will not put any blame on himself. he deflects, and he just doesn't seem genuine. I think he's really, really, what's the word? He's uncomfortable. And there's no doubt about that. But then you have on the other side of the field, on the other sideline, Hugh Freeze. Now he needs to make a statement. You know, he was at Liberty after leaving Ole Miss in that mess that I will not elaborate on, but he leaves Ole Miss. He ends up getting a job at Liberty, and they do pretty good. He brings that program up. Malik Willis, if you've ever heard of him, was a great quarterback that he recruited, that he was able to really have a lot of success with. Of course, he ended up being drafted to the Tennessee Titans, where he's a backup there currently. But, you know, then he gets this job at Auburn, and after a couple games, you know, he had a tough kind of sort of trap game at California, and there's, you know, that could have went either way. It was kind of a tricky thing, especially when you're a team from this side of the country and you have to go out there. It's late, and it's just, it's not like it's a tough environment, but it's just a different environment than you're used to. So they win that. And for Hugh Freeze, this would be a great step for this program, because at this point, myself personally, I don't know what they have. I don't know if Auburn's going to be a good team or not. You know, at SEC Media Days, Hugh Freeze, he kind of beat around the bush a little bit when he was talking about his team, and he was talking about what he thought they were going to do this year. Of course, year one, you know, he's rebuilding the team. It's kind of there's growing pains. There is a sort of a honeymoon period there. You know, it's that whatever they say, Rome wasn't built in a day or whatever, something like that. Well, you guys know what I mean out there, but you can't turn the program around in less than one season, or even one season, majority of the time. Now, Nick Saban did it in two. You know, he took a team that was terrible, that was struggling, that was in a bad place. He made it to a bowl game in his first year, but then there they are, championship status not too long after that. Now, Hugh Freeze is a great coach, and he has the hand he's dealt. And when you're a coach entering a new program, you know, you have this hand that you're dealt, and then you got to figure out what to do with it. And he hasn't had much time to recruit, obviously, and really build his team to his liking, but he seemed to be sort of beating around the bush when asked about his team. Like he knows that his team's not there. He knows that, you know, of his early observation of the team, that they're just not there. And they may not be there this year. And I think it was him not building up false hope for the fans, which I can respect and appreciate that. But I mean, I think they have a chance to do better than some people are saying they will. Of course, there's people very optimistic, very high on Auburn. But we'll just have to see. But right here, if you're Hugh Freeze, you want to go in there and you want to get a win, especially, you know, this is your first SEC game as an Auburn coach, as the Auburn head coach. This is your first SEC matchup. To go into College Station to win this game would put you on the right foot with the program and with the fan base, and it would really, you know, hype everything up there. But on the other side, you know, Texas A&M is tough. There's no doubt about that. You know, we pick fun. We make fun of them. Sometimes we make fun of Jimbo. But they're not a pushover. And this is a weird 11 a.m. game, but we'll just have to see how that one goes. But if you're either coach, obviously you want to win. You never want to lose, but Jimbo obviously may have more to lose, and actually he may not. He for sure has a lot to lose if he can't pull this out, especially early in the year like this. So as we go back to the slate here, the next game up on the SEC Network is Kentucky at Vanderbilt. Now, Vanderbilt, at this point of the season, they've reached SEC play, and they're going to have SEC play the rest of their games. But prior to the season, we predicted that Vanderbilt would be undefeated at this point, that they would win all their non-conference games. Of course, they failed to do so, especially, they've been close. Last week versus UNLV, they go in there, go to Las Vegas, and they give them a game, and they end up losing right there at the end. And I remember watching a little bit of that game in between others that I was watching at that point in time and thinking, man, they are so close. Like, they're almost a fair team. And being fair is a start for Vanderbilt. I used to like it when Vanderbilt was a little bit better. When they would give Ole Miss, for example, they would give Ole Miss a game every year, and at times it was really close. And I liked it when Vanderbilt was better. And, the athletic department is investing money. They're expanding their state. They're redoing a good portion of their stadium, and their program is being invested. Money is being invested into their program, and I like to see that. I really do. And we'll have to see. We pinpointed some games that could be close, that they have a possibly a chance of winning. This could be one of them here. I don't anticipate any surprises in this game, but it could be close at times. Kentucky, they're kind of rebuilding at quarterback. They're kind of unknown too. I don't know what they're going to look like this year. At the end of the season, I have no clue what Kentucky's going to look like. I have no clue what Vanderbilt's going to look like. But that's that game. And then we move on to the next game. There's 3 solid ACC games here, so you have those 2 that you can flip back and forth to. And when those are over, go on over to CBS at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 2:30 Central for Ole Miss in Tuscaloosa to play the Alabama Crimson Tide. Oh, man, there's so much we can talk about on this game. And hint, hint, we're going to talk about this one a little bit later, so I won't get into too much of it now, but, I'm throwing around the word statement a lot. Lane Kiffin has been the coach at Ole Miss since late 2019, right at beginning of 2020. His first year was the COVID year. They won 5 games out of 10. They were 5-5. And then in 2021, they went 10-2. Lost in the Sugar Bowl. Matt Corral got hurt. It was a whole fiasco there. All right. And then last year, they start out hot. They win 7 games in a row. Then they lose. And then they win. They almost beat Alabama. They come down to the last drive. They go down. They have 1st and 10 on Alabama's 15-yard line. They can't get it done. They get beat by an LSU team that ends up winning the West. And then you get to this year here, and you look back, and you say, what big games has Lane Kiffin won? What major wins has he had? He's one of the top paid coaches in all college football right now. After the end of last year, he got a very hefty raise. All right. They went to Tennessee. in the mustard bottle, beer bottle, golf ball, ketchup bottle, beer can game where everything, including the kitchen sink, was thrown onto the field at the end of that game, where Matt Corral had played the game of his life and put the team on his back and really kept him going there, especially late in that game, and they won. That was a huge victory for Lane Kiffin. What other big victories? Texas A&M last year when they went to College Station and beat the Aggies. It's another good one. You know, and there are more. You know, there are some other victories that at the time were good victories, but towards the end of the year, you're like, well, that's not really that good of a victory. See? Your wins can depreciate. Your victories can depreciate. And I hate that, but that's just how it is. If you beat a team early in the year that is a powerhouse, but they end up falling off the face of the earth middle way through the season, is that win really as good as it initially was? Lane Kiffin has a statement to make here. This team has a statement to make here. And they can make it versus Alabama. Lane Kiffin came close not that long ago. It was just a few years ago. They had the shootout for 3/4 of the game until Alabama pulled away and Ole Miss couldn't stop them anymore. And then obviously you had the game last year that I had just discussed, where it came down to the last drive. So then here you go now. You got a vulnerable Alabama, and you've got a team like Ole Miss with a quarterback in Jackson Dart that's improving. You got a running game that's kind of, it hasn't really developed, and it's not on the level that everybody anticipated they would be right now. That doesn't mean it's not there. We just haven't seen it yet this year. Jackson Dart's the leading rusher right now. I mean, he's on top of the world when it comes to rushing the ball. He's a great. We can see, and I'll get to this in more detail later, but we can see that he's going to be very valuable in that Ole Miss rushing game from here on out. But on the other side, you got Alabama. You got Nick Saban that's not getting any younger, and everybody's saying, "Oh, he's lost a step." Our great buddy Zack Ainsworth made a video on TikTok here just about a week ago where he asked that question, is Nick Saban losing a step? And maybe he is, you know. And I think they're just at this point where they have a little bit of an identity crisis. But can they figure it out? Nick Saban is still Nick Saban. He's the greatest coach of all time, and there's studs on that team. And you know Milrow's going to be the guy. He's going to be the guy. And he's going to want to prove himself in this game. He's going to want to prove himself because he knows that he didn't perform as well as he was supposed to. That the team is dependent on him too. And as we saw from last week against South Florida, USF, they had a lot of vulnerabilities. And I don't anticipate that same Alabama playing in this game. But we'll get to that here in a moment. Let's move on down the list, shall we? Up next, after that is UTSA at Tennessee. That's a 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central kickoff there on the SEC network. And the next, we got another SEC versus SEC opponent, Arkansas at LSU. Now, Arkansas is they're kind of in a bind right now. You know, they got really embarrassed. I don't want to say embarrassed, but they took a hard L to BYU last week in Fayetteville, of all places. And they're not too. It's not too hopeful. They don't have a lot of hope, in my opinion. I think they're not as good as we thought they would be. KJ Jefferson is not really developing. He's not improving much. Now, people may disagree with me. And, it wasn't that long ago, just a few weeks ago, prior to the season, a lot of people had KJ Jefferson as the number one quarterback in the SEC. And we talked about this, and we put him on back, closer to the middle of the road of the 14 SEC quarterbacks. The starting quarterbacks that way. We've seen a lot of quarterbacks play this season, but KJ Jefferson has to step up. He's got to. He's big physical quarterback. And you would think he would have improved more than he has, and maybe it's the team around him. Think about this. He has nobody to throw to. Who's he going to throw to? There's nobody out there. Can you tell me one Arkansas wide receiver? I'll give you a second. Name me one Arkansas wide receiver. So what do they have? And it's a coaching thing. They should be better. KJ Jefferson should be accommodated. There should be guys out there to catch the football. But I digress on that. LSU has been looking incredibly strong. I mean, they're, Jaden Daniels is incredible. Now, I've heard people this week praising him, and I've heard people this week saying that, he's really not, it's kind of he's overinflated right now. And the truth may be somewhere in the middle. I think his performance last week was incredible. Against Mississippi State, just to be so efficient and just to put the team on his back and do what he did in that game was incredible. And he was our number 3 quarterback going into the year, our number 3 SEC quarterback. And I don't see much change from what he did last week at Mississippi State. I think it's more of the same. All they have to do is go in there and just make plays. Just make plays. That's Arkansas and LSU. Up next, a couple games here, a couple easy games for Florida and Georgia. Charlotte at Florida at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central. That's the SEC Network Plus and ESPN Plus game. And then UAB at Georgia at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 Central on ESPN2. And then right here, another game, Mississippi State at South Carolina here at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Central Time on the SEC Network, the SEC Saturday night game. And this is going to be interesting to see here. I think Mississippi State's team morale I think they're good. Like we talked about a couple of days ago, they have these players-only meetings. Mississippi State does. And they have them regularly, and they really try to, stay on the same page, and I think that's good. And I think they just need to realize that they just have to figure out. They just had to figure it out because it obviously hasn't been figured out. What can they do to be better? I mean, what can they do to keep their spirits up? How do they they have to block that out of their mind. They say, okay, LSU came in here and they killed us. They destroyed us. We have to look past that. And we got to look forward because you have to go to Columbia, South Carolina, and you got to play Spencer Rattler, probably, if not the best, one of the 2 best quarterbacks in the SEC right now. He's playing lights out. And that's a great environment there, and those fans are passionate, and they're going to be at that game, and they're going to be expecting to see their South Carolina Gamecocks get the job done easily. And if you're Mississippi State, you have to know that everything right now is going against you, and you just have to keep the flood walls together. You got to keep the levee from breaking. You got to get through this game because it doesn't get any easier. Because you play this game here, and then you have Alabama the next week, late night game, like a 8 p.m. kick, local time there in Starkville. If you can find a way to win this game, and I don't know how they're going to do it, but if you can find a way to win this game, that really sets the inevitable is going to happen. Maybe. But you delay that by winning this game. Because you know you've got some more tough opponents ahead, and you know you're gonna get pounded again. And that's just the state of the program right now. But maybe they turn it around. We'll get to the road to victory for some of these games later, by the way, and kind of tell you what they need to do if they want to win. That game in particular is one of the ones that we'll include in our list there. But the final SEC game of the Saturday slate is Missouri versus Memphis, and this game's being played in St. Louis, Missouri. That's a 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Central kickoff on ESPNU. Now, Missouri coming off the 61-yard field goal by the thicker kicker. They obviously had that good win against Kansas State. And Memphis squeaked by last Thursday versus Navy in Memphis. That was a fairly entertaining game, but they got it done. I honestly think this may be a good game here because they're sort of, Memphis is tough. Memphis is always tough. I mean, they're a group of 5 team in the American Conference, but they can go toe-to-toe with an SEC team and beat an SEC team easily. At least the teams in the middle to lower portion of the conference. I don't see a Memphis beating an Alabama, Georgia, even a Tennessee. It's just not at this point. It's just the talent discrepancy that is so great. However, they can beat Missouri, just like they could beat an Ole Miss. They could beat a Kentucky, Auburn, Texas A&M, Mississippi State, South Carolina. They can beat any of those teams. That may be a good game to watch there. At a neutral site, it's an interesting game there. At a neutral site there in St. Louis. Well, that's your SEC Saturday slate, but we're going to take a look here. We got 3 more games right here outside the conference that you should look for. And there's these 3 right here. Number 19, Colorado goes to Oregon to play the number 10 Ducks. That's a 2:30 p.m. kickoff on ABC. Coach Prime is the talk of the college football world, and not just the college football world, beyond. I mean, if any of you listen to Josh Pate, on the late kick with Josh Pate, he's been referring to it as the Dion tax, and we're all paying it. And basically what he means by that is, he's getting Dion is bringing a lot of eyeballs to the sport, which is a great thing, obviously. But it's not football fans. Like, he's not just getting football fans. It's a lot of your, mainstream celebrity, people that don't really watch college football or maybe casual viewers. He's bringing them in just by his presence there at Colorado, just the star power that he has. And it's obviously a positive effect, but it has a negative effect as well. And really, the whole Dion thing it's a ticking, and I hate to say this, but it's a ticking time bomb. But it may go off, it may not. It may be faulty. It may be a faulty time bomb. Now, the line on this game right here is pretty great, in Oregon's favor. But should be a good game. But, it's... The train was going to start slowing down at some point. And Colorado has some tough games up ahead this year. And this is a start. This may be a start of a slight losing streak for them. We'll just have to see. Oregon's tough. Bo Nix is tough. And they've got a lot of talent out there in Oregon. Another game, if you for some reason don't want to watch that game, and for some reason you don't want to watch Alabama versus Ole Miss on CBS, if that game is showing in your area, which if you're in the majority of the country, especially the Southeast, that game's going to be on your local CBS station. But you can tune into Fox, and you can watch the 22-ranked UCLA Bruins play the number 11-ranked Utah. I don't know a whole lot about either of these teams. I haven't really looked much into them. I just know what Utah has done so far this year, and they're tough. And they've always seemed to be fairly tough, and they're 11th ranked here. I anticipate they win, and they could scratch the top 10. They could be in the top 10 next week. And our final game here that we're going to look towards as we reach the end of our Saturday slate here at 6:30 p.m. on NBC, the number 6th ranked Ohio State Buckeyes goes to Notre Dame Fighting Irish, the number 9 ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Again, 6:30 p.m. NBC game. We should be in for a treat there. If that's what you like. If you're any fan, an SEC fan, Pac-12 fan, Big 12 fan, obviously Big 10 fan, ACC fan. If you're a fan of college football, that game right there should be a good one to see. And the line is very close. And I anticipate that to be a wonderful game. I'm going to tune into that one, and that's going to be my main night game that I watch, among others, but that should be... I don't see that go... I think the line's too close. We'll take a look at the line here in a minute, by the way. But it's too close. Let's just go ahead and move into that. Right here is your odds. So I picked 4 games right here. Betting odds for week 4. I just picked 4 games, just give, we haven't done this before. Just to give you a little sneak peek into some sports betting odds. And I'm not really good against the spread. I play on ESPN fantasy app, and I try to pick the odds of these games in the NFL and in college football. I'm not very good at it. So, don't take any advice. Don't take any betting advice from me. If you want to lose money, go right ahead. But just saying. So there it is, right there. Notre Dame versus Ohio State. Ohio State's favor there, -3.5. Now, if you note here, the over/under for the game is 55.5. And I really think that the game's not going to be that close. I really don't. I think Ohio State's going to, they're going to get it done. And I think within 10 points, they win that game. If I was a betting man, I would take Ohio State -3.5. Couldn't tell you what the over/under would be. So if we move on to the next one here on the list, we got Clemson and Florida State. I put this one on here because it's another game that has a really close line. And this has Florida State minus 2.5. Now, Clemson is not the Clemson that we all knew and loved or hated. Just depending on where you're from, what team you support. But Clemson has been a depreciating asset for a few years now. Dabo has refused to be a modern day coach, and by modern I mean the last couple of years getting into the portal, really getting into all that modern things like, a Lane Kiffin or a Lincoln Riley and several other coaches are getting into. He just won't do it. And in doing so, these other teams are, up in their game. Meanwhile, he's going on a downward trajectory. He's pretty stubborn, in my opinion. In Florida State, they almost had a disaster on their hands last week at Boston College, but they got it done there. Florida State's not a bad team. They beat LSU in week 1 and just shot that high that LSU had coming off the season that they mustered up last year. But I think Florida State gets it done at least by a touchdown in that game. I could be dead wrong, and I more than likely am. But I just think Florida State can get it done. They're a good team. They're a great team. And I think they're going to get better as the year goes on. The next game on our list here, Alabama at Ole Miss. Alabama's favored, minus 7. And if you notice the over-under on these 3 games, that including this one here, 55.5 over-under. The thing about this Ole Miss game, this Alabama game, I see it like this. The lower score in the game is, and I anticipate it's going to be a little bit low. I don't think it's going to be a shootout. I think it's going to be a little bit lower scoring game, maybe moderate scoring. I just feel like Alabama has more of a chance to win if it's really low scoring. If it's higher scoring, the higher the scoring is, the more chance that I say that's Ole Miss that comes out with a victory. But Alabama minus 7, I don't know. I try hard to not, have too much bias here. But I think that's reasonable. I might pick Ole Miss plus 7, though, honestly. As in, hey, it's going to be closer than that, and Ole Miss might win this game, but they're not going to lose by more than 7 points. There's been many games here in the past where it's come close like that within the last 20 years. So the final game right here on our betting odds list for Week 4 is Oregon versus Colorado, and they have Oregon at minus 21. 3 touchdowns. 3-touchdown favorite over Colorado. 70.5 is the over-under. That's incredible. Now, if Colorado gets blown out that bad or worse, then that's going to be embarrassing. But what's funny about that is last Saturday, Colorado was like a 24-point favorite. And you saw how that game ended. So that's to be determined. But that's your betting odds. There's 4 games. We may take a look at more of these in the future every week and dive into that again. I'm not good at odds, at picking spreads whatsoever. That's just not, I'm just not good at that. I don't have good luck in that. But this week, teams, it's time to pick up the pace. I mean, it is go time. There are some huge games here. There's some statements. I keep using that word statements, but it's true. These teams have to make statements. These coaches have to make statements. We're in the meat and potatoes of the year, folks. And we're going to go straight on in to the RideAlong Sports Road to Victory. You've probably seen this before. If you haven't, basically, this is keys to victory. And we've got 4 here. 2 that I've done and 2 that were prepared by our good friend Zack Ainsworth. Let's look. What's the first one here on the list? Ole Miss at Alabama. So for Ole Miss, as we start out here. The first key, the first thing that Ole Miss needs to do, pressure, pressure, pressure. They have to get pressure on Milroe. There's no doubt about that. You have to get pressure on him. You have to get him to get out of the pocket. Force him to make bad throws. You got to sack him. You know, surprisingly enough, and this is highly unusual, but Alabama's offensive line has allowed like 12 sacks this year. Let me tell you what the exact number is. And you combat that by Ole Miss's defense, where Ole Miss has had 10 sacks, has sacked a quarterback 10 times just in these 3 games, which is pretty good. And that's unusual because usually Alabama, that's where a lot of their successes came over the years. They have stars, 5-star guys on each line of scrimmage. So all right, here, let's see what we've got here. That's offense. Let's see. Well, it's not here, but we'll circle back around to that. But basically, Alabama's vulnerable in the line. And if Ole Miss can get through and get on that quarterback and basically, and I've got another point here, they got to take the air out of the ball. Because that's where Alabama is going to have success. Get their receivers getting out into space, getting openings in the middle of the field, and just bomb one right over everybody's heads. That right there is how Alabama is going to score on Ole Miss, if they have to. But you pressure the quarterback. You force him to make bad decisions. You force him to run the ball. But at the same time, you don't want him to make a play with his feet. So it can be a double-edged sword. You know, if they have receivers way down the field and there's a big opening in the middle of the field or out in the flats, and you pressure him to scramble out right or out left, probably right, and he's got 20 yards of running room, then, you know, what difference does that make? And you can't set up quarterback spies the whole game. You can't, you know, have a whole player, one whole position just used up for quarterback spy the whole game. Pete Golding better have a good plan, and I know him and Kiffin are cooking something up right now as we speak. Number 2, Ole Miss has to protect Jackson Dart. The exact thing, but opposite from Alabama. They have to protect him and allow him to make plays with his arms and his legs. He is a pivotal part of this rushing attack from Ole Miss. It's different than what we thought. Quinshon Judkins has started the year slow. I don't know if it's just a sophomore slump, if he's been hurt. I know he's been banged up, he's had some injuries, but here it's to be determined, you know, how this rushing attack's going to look, and I think Jackson Dart is going to be a great part of this, and you have to allow him to make those plays, especially if they can't throw the ball. You know, you give him another option. But also, if you protect him, if the line wins the battle, then he can get the ball to whoever needs it, whoever's open. And if nobody's open, he has time to run. That's what you got to do in this game. And number 3, you got to wear the Alabama defense down with these long drives. But you don't fizzle out. Now, we've seen this from Ole Miss this year. They've managed to have some pretty long, extensive drives, not just bam, 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 we're going to score in 4 plays, but like lengthy, several-minute drives. But right here, as you see the point, but you don't want to fizzle out and turn that work. You want to turn that work into touchdowns. You don't want to waste a drive, especially now. And you look at the clock rules, the new clock rules that we have in college football. You have 60 minutes in a football game, but you can tell that time of possession is less than it used to be because the clock's always running. The clock's always running. It rarely stops, like it used to. So you have to score touchdowns. Field goals aren't good enough. And you have a great kicker in Caden Davis that can kick probably from 60 plus. But you don't need to just depend on him. You've got to get touchdowns. And that's the problem that Ole Miss has had in the past. Kiffin has went forward on 4th down to try to extend a drive to get a touchdown, and they would get turnovers. And that's a big problem. And we'll see if they can, wear this defense down, like I said, but get touchdowns. And actually, cap it off by that. So for Alabama, their number 1 road to victory, they just got to win both lines of scrimmage. That's something that Alabama's known for, their line. Like I said a moment ago, they have to win the battle on offense. They got to protect Milroe. Allow him to get that. Allow him to have time for the receivers' routes to develop so he can get that ball where it needs to go. And on defense, get to Jackson Dart. He's better than he was. He's had more experience. He seems fairly comfortable, and he's elusive. But if you get pressure on him, shake him up early. Prevent any rushing attack. That's what you got to do. Like this point says right here in parentheses, you have a higher level of talent. You always have. And you've got to take advantage of that. Put your players in the right decision. But just that's all you got to do. I mean, you contain. You're just containing Ole Miss. And it starts there at the line of scrimmage. But also right here, the number 2 point, you got to play with discipline, and you got to take care of the football. No penalties. And this right here is something that it feels weird to even have to explain for an Alabama team, but they have to play with discipline. No silly penalties, and they got to take care of the football. Milroe can't be throwing it all over the place, getting interceptions. They can't be fumbling the ball. They can't be giving the ball up. And they just have to, no miscommunication. They just got to play like Alabama's played for the past 15 years. No turnovers. Turnovers are going to be a killer in this game. And the number 3 point, you got to establish a running game and combo that with over the top with the long ball. Get that running game going. Get that Ole Miss. Yes, that's right. Get that Ole Miss defense on their heels and top that off with a bomb deep. We saw that in the Texas game. We saw some bombs thrown in that Texas game. But that's what you got to do. And if they can do that, they can win this game and continue on and say, hey, y'all thought Ole Miss was going to come in here and win? But that's going to be a good game nonetheless. There's no doubt about that. As we move to our next game here, in our RideAlong Sports Road to Victory, it's Colorado and Oregon. And this is so tough, but this is what I came up with. Number 1 for Colorado, they've got to spread the ball around. Shedeur Sanders is a great quarterback. And, they have playmakers on that team. They got to get the ball to him. Do not be one-dimensional. You got to be able to do multiple things. You got to run, you got to pass, you have talented people out there. You just got to get the ball to them. There's no doubt about that. Number 2 for them right here. Don't let Bo Nix pick apart your defense. Bo Nix, we all know him. He used to be at Auburn, and he's doing a great job out there at Oregon. They're a powerhouse. They're going to throw the ball all over Colorado. But if you want to win this game, you cannot let him do that. Don't let him, you're vulnerable. But don't let him expose those vulnerabilities. You have to you have to make him one-dimensional. And I don't know how you're going to do that, but if that's even possible. But you just can't let him do that. And maybe that's by pressuring him. Maybe that's by just making plays out there, 1-on-1, out in the secondary. But right here, you got to force Oregon to make mistakes whatever way you can. Because they're going to play near flawlessly, in my opinion. And you have to put them off their game. And the earlier you do it in the game, the better. So for Oregon, see right there, the number 1 point for them, for their road to victory, Bo Nix. Let the kid go. Let the kid play the game. He's got a lot of strength. He's got a lot of power. He can do a lot. He just needs to be on his A game. He needs to get that ball around. Colorado's pass rush is weak, and he just needs to expose that, and he can. If he plays a great game, Oregon wins this game comfortably. You saw that line. You saw the odds on that game. It all starts right there with Bo Nix. Number 2 point, establish a solid running game. What's a better way, to top off your great passing performance with a solid running performance? Shake that defense up. You run the ball, you pass the ball, you pass the ball and you're successful at that. And then when they think you're going to keep passing it, you run it. And when they think you're going to run it, you pass it. And basically, you firing on all cylinders. That's what you got to do. One or the other would probably win you this game, but if you have both, that's a definite W there. And the number 3 point for Oregon, you got to pressure Shedeur Sanders. Make him just like Ole Miss with Jalen Milroe. You got to pressure him. Force him to make bad throws. Shake him up. Knock him down. Sack him. Force him to get out of the pocket. But don't let him extend the play with his feet. See, it can be a double-edged sword, like I said. But you have to get pressure on him and get in his head early. And that's how Oregon is going to win that game. Now, as we move on, we got a couple more here. Now, these are courtesy of Zack Ainsworth. He handed me these earlier, and he's probably changed his points by now. But I just went with these. For Mississippi State and South Carolina, first of all, for Mississippi State, they have to establish the passing game. This is an ex-air raid squad. And, you really just have to... They have to get this passing game going. I mean, it's ridiculous. They really need to get back to what they were doing. It was a shock to the system going from the air raid, and we talked about this extensively the last couple episodes. But you got a quarterback that has always played the air raid system, his whole life in high school, and then followed Mike Leach around. And then to do something different like they're doing now, that's just it's obviously not working. The air raid wasn't really working, and then here you are with this sort of balanced offense, and it's not working. Will Rogers is struggling, and he has to step it up. He has to make throws. He has to be able to in whatever way necessary, and that means the offensive line is going to have to block, and that's whole nother point. They need to give him time so he can sit in the pocket and make those throws, because he wasn't able to do that against LSU. They were pressuring him all game. Another point, contain Spencer Rattler. We talked about this at the beginning of the show, and we're going through the SEC slate. Spencer Rattler may be the best quarterback in the SEC right now. If he's not the best, he's one of the top 3. He is getting it done. I heard somebody on a radio show say earlier in this week that if Spencer Rattler is quarterback for Alabama, they win the national championship. Could you imagine that? He's great. I mean, he's a 4-dimensional quarterback. You got to contain him. You got to make him at least 2-dimensional. I don't know if you can make him 1-dimensional, but you have to. You just got to contain him. I mean, you can't let him make throws. You can't let him run. You just need to prohibit him from doing what he's been doing the past few weeks. That's how Mississippi State can win. For South Carolina, you got to stop the run. We know Mississippi State's running now. They're a running team. You got to stop the run, because we know if you look at the other point, Mississippi State has to establish the passing game. Well, they have to establish the passing game, because if South Carolina can stop the run, they have nothing. They're not going to be able to move the ball, so they have to be able to pass. So South Carolina's got to stop the run. And the second point for them, get the crowd into the game early. That's an interesting point there. Got to get the crowd into the game early. You know, it's an environment there in Starkville, but South Carolina, that's at William Bryce there in Columbia, South Carolina. That's a big stadium that holds a lot of people. You get those people excited. I think they're excited about their quarterback. If you're a South Carolina fan out there, you should be excited about your quarterback and what your team looks like. Force Mississippi State to make bad plays because they're having to just create an environment. Create a tough environment, because they're already struggling, and that right there, especially like you said early in the game, get them out of it. That's what South Carolina's got to do if they want to beat Mississippi State. If we move on to the other game here that Zack had for us, it's Ohio State at Notre Dame. The first point for Ohio State, get the ball to Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvin Harrison Jr., son of Marvin Harrison, the famous Colts wide receiver from a little time ago. He's a playmaker out there. And he can make plays. You just got to get the ball to him. It's as simple as that. And the other point for Ohio State, protect Kyle McCord. Just simple things. 2 simple things. Protection, and those really go hand in hand there. If you protect him, he can get the ball to Marvin Harrison Jr. They can get touchdowns. They can beat Notre Dame. Now, what Notre Dame has to do, win one-on-one matchups down the field. Shake things up. That's pretty self-explanatory. Win one-on-one matchups down the field. Your secondary has to be able to break passes up, intercept the ball. And on offense, you have to be able to win the same matchups with you on offense. Because the game can be won and lost. Not at the line of scrimmage necessarily. Yes, at the line of scrimmage from the protection and the blocking standpoint. But the game's going to be won and lost 20, 30 yards, 40 yards down the field. And Notre Dame's second point, make the first few drives count. Get and maintain an early lead. They have to get up on Ohio State. You're going to get your crowd into it. You're going to get everybody excited. You do not want to play from underneath, especially a high-caliber team like Ohio State. You want to start early, and you want to put your foot on the gas and don't take it off. That's what Notre Dame's got to do if they want to win this game. Should be a great game. There's no doubt about that. I mean, this one is... I don't know if it'll be as close as the odds say, but nonetheless, that's your RideAlong Sports. Road to victory, your 4 games there. But before we end the show, we're going to take a look, and this may be obvious to you people out there, but we're going to start doing this every week. Our RideAlong Sports Game of the Week. Now, you may say, oh, well, there's several games that's suitable for this, right? And I'm kind of giving it away in this camera shot here. But here it is. Your RideAlong Sports Game of the Week. It is the 15th ranked Ole Miss Rebels going to Tuscaloosa to play the number 13 ranked Alabama Crimson Tide. You don't believe it, do you? Huh? You don't believe that I was going to pick this game for the Game of the Week, huh? No, I would never do that. I would never do that. We started talking about this earlier. Started talking about this game earlier, and we talked about the statement that Lane Kiffin needs to make. He needs a good quality win on his resume. And this would be an incredible win for him. To beat Saban, he's been so close. This right here is how you make yourself worth that $9 million that you're getting paid. You go in here and you beat Nick Saban in Tuscaloosa like Hugh Freeze did 8 years ago. You earn respect. That's how people know you're not just mediocre. You're not just okay. You're not just good. And if there's ever a time to beat Alabama, if there's ever a time when they're vulnerable, it's right now. You got a great quarterback in Jackson Dart that is three-dimensional. He had a very long run last week versus Georgia Tech. He threw the ball incredibly well. He was fairly efficient. He didn't make many mistakes. You saw some plays against Tulane the week prior to that, like where he evaded a turnover on downs. The defensive end came around and he evaded the sack, juked him out, rolled out to his right, threw the ball to a wide open receiver, touchdown Ole Miss. He made something out of nothing. He took a terrible mistake, not really a mistake, but he took lemons and made lemonade. And he's good. But is Jalen Milroe better? He's going to have to prove himself. And I think he's going to want to do that. Milroe, that is. I think he's going to want to prove himself. I heard some buzz about last week that, hey, maybe Saban made him sit out the game because of his attitude. Maybe his attitude wasn't in the right place. And that may be true. But he's going to want to show them that he's who he should be. That he is a good quarterback. And Alabama doesn't have to have an incredible quarterback to win and be successful. They don't. They've been successful. They've won championships with middle-of-the-road quarterbacks. I'm obviously not talking about a Jalen Hurts or a Bryce Young. I'm talking about other quarterbacks in previous years. Even a Mac Jones is a better of, is one of the better ones of the past 15 to 20 years. But right now, Jalen Milroe is 27 to 45, 60% passing percentage. Of course, he only played 2 games. 449 yards, 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Again, I bring the statement thing up. It's a statement game for him. But on the flip side, going back to Jackson Dart, we'll see where he is. We'll see if he really is improved. He's looked incredible starting this season. We'll see if he's actually reached that next level. He could have a star game, or he could get picked apart. That's to be determined. This should be a great game. I think a lot of people, most people, are hesitant to pick against Alabama. And I understand that. I understand struggling to pick against Alabama because you think the Crimson Tide, they have been the epitome, the top of the college football world. As Kiffin said, they're the greatest college football team in the past 15 years. And there's no question about that. Look at Clemson. We talked about Clemson a minute ago. They're nothing. They had that certain stretch of time there where they were incredible, where they were competing against Bama, where they were beating Alabama for national championships, where they're going back and forth. One would win one year, and you get a national championship, and then you get a national championship. But Alabama's been consistent this whole time. Nick Saban's the greatest quarterback, greatest coach of all time. He was not a quarterback, but he's the greatest coach of all time. And can he figure it out? Does he have the right coordinators? Does he have the right coaching staff? Will Saban be outcoached by Lane Kiffin, Pete Golding, and Charlie Weiss Jr.? That's to be determined. If he gets outcoached in this game, I think the Rebels can come out with a victory. In the past 2 years, we've seen Nick Saban be outcoached many times, multiple times. And that's unheard of. That's unbelievable. But Alabama's got vulnerabilities. They're not perfect. And if Ole Miss can expose those vulnerabilities, if they can find the cracks, if they can get through that line and get to him and pressure the quarterback, get sacks, mess up drives. If you're on a third down and Alabama's trying to get the first down and you bust through there on a blitz and get a sack, you take points away from Alabama. And every time you take points away from Alabama, if you force them to punt, or if you take a possession away from them, that's a small victory right there. And then especially if you turn that into points, that increases your every time you do that, you're increasing your chances of winning. And it's good to start early in the game. One thing that I am hopeful for Ole Miss is that they've been ending games well. They've been playing great fourth quarter football, and you're going to have that. Not if you're losing by 30 points in the fourth quarter. But, if you start out well and you're able to finish the game on the same or a greater level, then, hey, you can do it. And then, like I said earlier, on the road to victory, if you wear that Alabama defense down and start scoring some points. But see, Ole Miss's defense is a little bit better, They're okay. but okay is better than it has been. So if they can somehow take away drives, cause Alabama to turn the ball over, they can win this game. But for Alabama, hey, they just got to focus and they've got to be Bama. There's no other way to put it. They've got to be Bama. They got to win the line of scrimmage. They got to drop those bombs down the field. And for Nick Saban, it's just got to be another day at the office. Hey, I'm excited, so excited about this week. Week 4 is here, folks. And it's a day of college football. It's a whole day. Some great SEC matchups, head-to-head. Some things like games like Notre Dame, Ohio State outside the SEC, Colorado, Oregon, many others. Whatever your team is, whoever you support out there, let us know. Let us know what your thoughts are on this game here, our game of the week, and others. And just enjoy it, folks. Again, follow us on TikTok for content. We've got a bunch of videos going up for this week, and we'll continue that at RideAlong Sports. We're also on X, Twitter. Subscribe to us here on YouTube. If you're on Spotify, follow us there and keep track of us. We try to record and, or should I say, post the upload is the right word I'm looking for. Upload the audio version of these shows regularly. Because if you're like me, you like listening to stuff when you're at work. You like to be occupied. You know, it helps me focus when I'm listening to podcasts and stuff in my ear. Plus, it's informative, you know. Very informative. I listen to informative things. Not always. But I hope that will be a good thing for you to listen to, that you'll listen to us, that you'll watch us, that you'll follow us on our platforms, and let us know what you think on the comments here on YouTube and on our other platforms. And hey, enjoy this week, folks. Week 4, college football. So for Zack Ainsworth, my name is Brandon Taylor. This has been the RideAlong Sports Show, your Week 4 preview. We'll see you folks next time. Enjoy this week. God bless.